Hello and welcome on to another episode here of the ISO Ball Podcast with your host, Derek Terrio, your place to learn about the NBA on and off the court. And we've got a nice special episode here, especially for you local Raptor listeners. Two guys out of the three from That's a Wrap podcast. We've got Jay and Andreas here. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate the time talking some Raptors here before free agency and the draft starts.
Thank you for having us. We're a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for asking us to join. I mean, we're always good to talk about Raps, and we're excited to jump on the pod here and get this going.
Oh, for sure. Always like to talk some Raptors and, primarily just because of my location just outside of Toronto. Most of my listeners are Raptor listeners, so this one is probably something they'll get a good value out of. And considering I'm a Raptor fan myself, this is always going to be an enjoyable conversation. But you guys, I personally on Isoball podcast talk about the landscape of the NBA, do my best to cover all 30 teams and, most of the time fail because it's so hard to cover all 30 teams as one person. But you guys specifically cover just the Raptors, which is super awesome. So can you guys talk a little bit about how you started That's a Wrap podcast? So what got you into it? Are you guys from Toronto? Like, give me the backstory. What's up with you guys?
Yeah, well, the backstory is that the third member of That's a Wrap, Jason, our wonderful producer there, he actually got this ball rolling. Him and I used to work together for the Toronto Raptors as part of the Fan Patrol many, many years ago, and he kind of kept in touch, noticed that I was a writer for Raptors HQ and said, hey, you're a writer there. Why don't you, have you ever considered podcasting? And that's where that kind of started. And then, Dre, I think you can fill in the blanks on how you and Jason know each other.
Yeah, Jason's definitely the bridge. We used to do basketball camp when we were teenagers, like 14, 15 years old. And we went to high school together, and we were both in, oddly enough, extreme metal bands, separate ones, but we did battle the bands and stuff on stage together. So we've always had a mutual respect for one another. And I don't know how he dealt with my satanic metal phase, but he did, one of the very few. And we kept in touch. I was doing a lot of music journalism, and he was doing sound work for festivals. I believe I met him up at Turf Toronto. So over the years, we just kept in touch. And I was doing podcast work with a website called Live in Limbo when I was doing all of that music journalism stuff. And Jason and I did a couple of episodes together. And when the Kawhi Leonard trade happened, I think that just sparked something at Jason where he said, I'm talking to this guy, Jay. He's like a Raptors expert. I'm talking to this guy, Dre. He's done podcast stuff before. This is the moment. When that trade happened, he said, we got to start this right now. So I think he asked us both separately. And it's like, do you want to start this pod now? Yes. Oh, it's with another guy. Who? Oh, it's with Dre, or it's with Jay. And we met literally on the air. That was it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love
that
it.
all happened the day of the trade.
That's unreal. I remember when I was doing the day of the trade too. I was on my way to work, and you heard some rumblings that it was going to happen, and then it came up on my phone. I believe it happened early in the morning, and I ripped into the parking lot, and my coworkers were scared. They're like, "Are you running from the police? Where are you? What are you doing?" And I can't really tell them that hey, we just acquired what could be the best player in the NBA, and you just don't know it yet. But that's kind of what happened. But
it's
no,
a
that's
special
awesome
day for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's awesome. So you guys are a fairly new podcast, but I'm assuming not fairly new Raptor fans. Am I correct?
Yeah, since day one.
Love
don't let the baby face fool you. Been a fan of basketball for almost 40 years now.
Love it.
And Raptors basketball, obviously, for 25.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say.
My father was a massive Celtics fan. We're actually from South Africa. My father's Zimbabwean. And when we moved to Canada, he basically, it was a year before the Raptors were inaugurated. So it was all right, we're going to swap teams. We're going to be Raptors fans now. And I was obviously I don't even know. I think I was 6. So I was really young, maybe even younger. I was really young, and I didn't really have a say, but I was I like dinosaurs. I like basketball, I've learned. So yeah, I'm totally aboard with this, and I'm glad that they're local. So yeah, technically since day one, but unlike Jay, I remember very little of the Stoudemire years because I was under 10 years old. So
for sure,
since day one.
For sure. Yeah. So myself, I'm 26, so I've basically been alive as long as the Raptors. So I can't necessarily say that I'm day one. I've been kind of like on and off. Like I was like watching a lot of like the Vince Carter years, and I remember the second round missed shot against Philadelphia in Game 7 going down to the wire. I remember that, and then the transition into the Chris Bosh years. That was a lot of fun, and then it just kind of faded out between the overlap between that and the Bargnani years. That's where I started to fade it out a little bit, and then when I really came back into
all
it.
of us.
Okay, so I'm not alone there, which is good. So when I really got back into it was the beginning of the 13-14 season when we made the Rudy Gay trade for what I think was Patrick Patterson, Grievous Vasquez, and John Solomons, which was supposed to be a trade that put us further down into the dumps after starting what I think was 6-13, and then we really started actually making a run, and that run kind of started the We the North train. From 14-15, and yes, I think we got swept by the Wizards that year. 15-16 was the first run of the conference finals, and then 17-18 were got LeBron toed a little bit on that years, and then eventually we made it to the finals and won a championship. So it was good to finally catch on the beginning, I guess, of the I guess that's like the very beginning of the bandwagon, if you'll call it, like the very, very beginning. So I guess that's kind of where I would consider myself. Even though I had been watching previous to that, I wasn't really paying attention like I was in 13-14 all the way up until now. So that's my context as a Raptor fan. But enough about how much of a Raptors fans we are. I think we all know what's going on here. Let's talk about just kind of recap briefly what happened at the end of the season, the bubble, going 7 games with Boston, a fantastic series, I might add. Credit to the Celtics. They put together a fantastic series, the OG shot in Game 3, the double overtime in Game 6. But I think what really kind of stings with the fans is the play of Pascal Siakam, in my opinion. I think, I think we can agree he underperformed on both ends of the floor in that series, and it made for a lot of, is Pascal really the guy we need to be paying the 28% max to over the next 4 or 5 years? And I personally think he's still that guy. I've got a lot of reasons to believe so. I wrote an article about it on Tip of the Tower, but I want to know what your guys' kind of opinion is. Do you guys think any differently of Pascal after that series against Boston, even considering that he ran into 3 stout wing defenders in Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum checking him? Do you guys think any different of Pascal? Does it make you more worried? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Absolutely not. I'm like, we already saw slight signs when the bubble first started that this is a guy where when he said he didn't touch a ball for like 3 months, unlike Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was pretending that, he actually didn't. And it clearly was something that he needed to get back into rhythm to. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, he's an athlete, he should know better. We're talking about Pascal Siakam, a guy who's miraculously been playing basketball not even for like half of his life, less than 10 years, whereas, LeBron James, the kid from Akron, Ohio, he's been at it since like he started. He's like athletically built. He was like either going to go to the NFL or the NBA, but he was set from a young age. Siakam wasn't. He just kind of fell into it and became a fantastic player. And I think that's just too much pressure that he's received. It's merely because he's becoming the franchise player, where he's becoming the guy who's going to lead the team once Lowry is kind of too old to be the leader of the team, and now it's just a veteran presence. So, and judging his playoff performance last year, like that Game 1 in the finals, like
right.
I
People forget about that really quickly.
Right, exactly. I have very few doubts about this guy. If this continues on for like an entire year, then I'll say, what has happened to Pascal Siakam? But considering the drought, considering that if the Boston Celtics had a better center, they could have actually won a championship. Like, this is one hell of a team that they have, and they're clearly making trades. They're clearly discussing, can we get Rudy Gobert at the 5? They're trying to figure out trades right now where they can be a championship caliber team because they're basically one piece away. And the fact that this is who we were up against, and we did reasonably well. I think people are being way too hard at Pascal Siakam. He's just in a bit of a funk. The same funk, you brought up the Wizards sweep that Lowry was in, and guess what? Now Lowry is often discussed as one of the most underrated players in the league, and I'm
That's right.
going
Good
to
point.
assume that Siakam's also going to be in that same boat where he's going to be underrated because he's Torontonian. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Dre. And I think just to add on to the fact that, yeah, like you touched on it, Siakam's meteoric rise has just been really unseen in the NBA. Where he's only in his fourth season, fourth season,
Mhm.
and every year it's been you could you could almost say that from rookie to sophomore year to from being that low first round draft pick to being the leader of the bench mob and being a G League champion already, that's already a high enough jump for most players. And then he still jumps up to the all-star level. And now he's trying to make that. This is the hardest part of his transition, is becoming that number one player. And while he showed a lot of signs at the beginning of the regular season, this pandemic and his growth has to hit a cap at some point, right? And he kind of hit that early this year. And I think that what he endured in the bubble, losing to the Celtics, and the Celtics having, for if you think about how long this pandemic was and how long these guys were off, in addition to what Dre was saying about Siakam not touching a basketball, is that we kind of knew that the Celtics and the Raptors were going to be facing each other in the playoffs, right? The writing was on the wall there that these two were going to finish 2-3. So think about that. That's 6 months for Jaylen Brown to study Siakam's every move. That's a lot of time. And to have that much time to prep for Siakam's moves and his counter moves, they did an awesome job of that. And I give them credit for that. But I think that if Siakam has shown us anything, it's that you just cannot doubt the guy. So I'm on board with both of you here in terms of he's definitely still worth what we're paying him, and that extension does kick in now. So if anything, because the extension only kicks in this upcoming season, we were still getting a great discount on him last season.
That's a good point.
So I look forward to him kind of showing his worth come December 22nd.
Yeah, you guys hit it right on the head. Like I was hoping to be able to add something, but you guys just knocked it right out the park. Like I think we forget, like Andreas, you made a great point. That game one against the Warriors in 2019, like people just forget he just dropped like a cool 32 and 10 on Draymond Green, like that.
Right.
Like wow, like you know what I mean? Like we're just gonna forget about that. Like that's pretty crazy. The other thing too is like I think you could argue pretty vehemently that not only has Siakam never been a first option on a team, I don't think he's even ever been a second option. I think Lowry, for a lot of that playoff run last year, especially in those Bucks series and the Warriors series, you could consider him the second option. So he's really being thrust into this role as well, while still also being asked to maintain his effort defensively, which I think is also something that we don't consider enough. Just the fact that not only does he have to carry the offensive load, but also, carry at least the second or third or sometimes first scoring option on the wing defensively. And I know OG has done a fantastic job of that. And looks like he's going to be that primary wing stopper going forward, which is kind of, I would say, crucial for Siakam's development to not have to carry that massive load. But I think you guys hit it right on the head. I am not worried in the slightest about Pascal Siakam. Now let's be fair though. He does need to improve. I think there are areas that Siakam can get better. In the mid-range, I would say, is one area. He does have a variety of crafty moves, the step-throughs, the spin moves to get to the rim. But when he starts sitting on that, you've got to be able to have that in-between game. Obviously, outside the arc, you want to see him specifically off the dribble shoot better from there. But more specifically to all of that, I think I want to see Siakam be more efficient and more effective with less dribbles. You ever notice when Siakam gets into his moves, how many dribbles it takes for him to actually get to his move? It invites the help. And at this point, I wouldn't consider Siakam a necessarily dynamic passer out of double teams, which is probably another place that he can get better. But more than anything, I think I'd like to see Siakam get more effective and more efficient with less dribbles to get to his moves to attract less defensive help, which he's going to see continuously if he's going to be that first option. Do you guys agree with that? And what else would you say Siakam needs to improve on to get to that place where we're not worried about him anymore?
Yeah, I think the whole spin move thing and everything was fantastic when he was second or third option, because if you imagine, like, you're looking at like a Russell Westbrook or Kobe Bryant, somebody who's like the guy bringing the ball up, and all all eyes are on him. There's double teams. When you're the third option and you're Pascal Siakam, when you're not Kawhi and you're not Lowry, they dish it to you in the paint, you spin, and you get it up. When you're the guy bringing the ball up, or you're trying to play make, or you're trying to be like the main guy that's being double or triple teamed, you can only do so much. So he's basically got to stop being by the book. Like, it's as if you opened up 2K and it's like, we have this rule book and all these moves and stuff that you can do. No, he's got to break out of that, be a little bit more improvisational, and also, oddly enough, I would say dial it back and more fundamental as opposed to trying to be like the flashy guy. Because that's what's
right. I agree.
That's what's great about him and the Raptors overall. Like the Spurs or the Grizzlies at their height, it's their fundamentals. You know, when the Grizzlies did really well and they made the Western Conference Finals, it was because they were grit and grind. With the Spurs, I mean, their best player of all time is literally called, you know, the big fundamentals. So I think that's where Siakam is coming from. He needs to be that kind of a player where he's not going to be like a Dame Lillard or who's somebody of his size that we can compare to, like a Jokic or something. He's not going to be the flashy guy. He's going to be the basics to basics type guy who gets it to the rim. Stop at the threes until you refine it a little bit. That should be a cherry on top. That shouldn't be a go-to mechanism.
I agree.
Just be fundamental, because he clearly, and I believe this, is meant to play basketball because he got into it so quickly and is already getting so much better. That means he's just built for it. That means that he's naturally gifted as a basketball player. You're an all-star now, but not all-stars have to be sparkly and flashy on the front of NBA 2K. Some all-stars, like Tim Duncan, just get it done. And that's what he needs to do. Just get it done and stop worrying about craftiness, because craftiness works once in a while. He's got to just get it to the rim or get it out to an open offensive player. That's it.
Yeah,
I think
and
that
sorry,
one,
Jay,
one,
just before you go
yeah,
here,
go for it.
like I think we're selling Siakam short. Like, Siakam was second team All NBA. That means the NBA decided he was one of the 4 best forwards in the regular season. Like, that is very high praise for a player of Siakam's ilk. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that, because second team All NBA is different from what some people would consider fringe all-star, right? Like, D'Angelo Russell was an all-star like a couple of years ago. Like, are we saying D'Angelo Russell is as good as Pascal Siakam? Not even close to me. So, like, I just want to be like, make sure we understand, like, Siakam at this point, Siakam is an all NBA level player, and I think he'll continue to be that. Even if it's third team, I still think he's going to be on that track, assuming he gets better. Sorry, Jay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, no, that's totally fine. And I think the only thing I would add to that, and you make some great points there in terms of him being that all NBA talent, is that we already touched upon it earlier about how little basketball he's actually played in his life. And I can't help but compare him to Neo of the Matrix. And, whenever he needed to learn a new skill, he just got it downloaded and all of a sudden he was an expert at it. He is not Neo. I'm sorry. He needs time to learn a new skill and grow it. And it's not going to be as simple as and quickly as Neo has. So let's just give him time to like marinate on some of these skills, and some of these skills that you have actually touched upon, Derek, right? He is able to pass quite well out of double teams. It's getting there. His mid-range game is improving. It's just not there yet. We saw some of the Dirk fadeaway this year, and just some mid-range pull-up shots from him. We just kind of see more of that, more repetition in that aspect. So the tools are there. He just needs to hone them in a bit. And I think that while we're looking at a very short off season, the rest of the season and the way his growth projection has gone, I think that there's still room for a lot of hope there in terms of his growth.
Yeah, I agree with that. But overall, nobody's panicking on Pascal yet. We still think he's got a lot of room to grow.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's kind of move into now the offseason for the Toronto Raptors, where, there are some minor decisions, to be made. We've got non-guarantees here for Matt Thomas, Terrence Davis, who is facing some very serious allegations. We don't necessarily have to get into that. Dwayne Hernandez as well. All of those minor deals. There's a pending well, not pending, I would say OG Anunoby is now extension eligible. Maybe we can talk about whether or not he'd be willing to take an extension with the Raptors. But I think the big thing here is Fred VanVleet, probably one of the top free agent on the market right now, has a cap hold of 17.7 million, almost certainly going to get paid more than that. It seems like around the league, well, first of all, Fred's looking to get paid. Okay, he went on Old Man in the 3 podcast. I'm sure you guys heard it, right? How he said it's my time to cash out. I want my money, this, that, and the other, and he's fully in his right to do so. He bet on himself twice, and it paid off. I think it's time for the organization to bet on him. What are you guys looking to? What's the walkaway number for Fred VanVleet? Let's just get right to it. We know how valuable he is to this team. He's 26. He's in the prime of his career. We're going to be locking him up. Plays both ends of the floor. Likely to be the successor to Kyle Lowry should he come back. What is the walkaway number you're looking to pay Fred VanVleet to get him to stay, while keeping in mind the 2021 plan that's going on? Not necessarily subtly, I would say, but the name Giannis Antetokounmpo does come up amongst Raptor fans quite a bit, and there's a reason for that. So, keeping that in mind, what's your walkaway price for a guy like Fred VanVleet?
Are you talking about walkaway for Fred or walkaway for the Raptors?
Walkaway. Oh, great question. Walkaway for the Raptors.
Okay. For me, I would limit it at 4 years, 80 million. So we're looking at a 20 million cap.
Okay.
Anything beyond that, I think, thanks for your service, but this is as high as we'll go. I know on The Athletic, Blake Murphy and Eric Corrine had their own little mock negotiation. Right. And I believe Blake, representing the Raptors, never went higher than, I believe, 17 or 18 million.
Yeah.
So, and I imagine that could be something that we could see play out. But here's one thing that I'd like to note, based off of what you were just saying about the JJ Redick's pod there and what Fred had to say. A couple of big points came out of that for me, and him talking. Fred kind of showed two sides of this, right? On one side, it was, I've kind of paid my dues. I've always, kind of bet on myself, and I think that now it's my turn to get paid. So that one way to interpret that is, whoever's the highest bidder, I'm all yours. But on the flip side, he also said things like, he understands the importance of chemistry, and he cited the Raptors and the Miami Heat during their both of their respective playoff runs. He also said that while he envisions himself to be a leader of a team, he also doesn't see the problem of sharing that leadership role currently with Kyle and Pascal. I think that the whole "I want to get paid" kind of got lost in that was the big quote that everyone wants to talk about. But if you listen to the entire podcast, there's a lot of things that Fred said there, which kind of points to him wanting to stay in Toronto. And something that I think also stood out to me in regards to him being so adamant on wanting to get paid is, take a look at the landscape and the teams that are supposed to be pursuing Fred VanVleet. We've got the Knicks, the Hawks, the Pistons, and the Suns. Now,
maybe you can include Charlotte, but yeah, go ahead. You hit the
maybe
right on the money.
You're right. So with the Knicks and the Pistons, already we're hearing word out of, I believe it was John Hollinger was saying that they're starting to direct their attention elsewhere. There's no specific names out there. Obviously, with Russell Westbrook now saying that he wants out of Houston, I'm sure that New York will be knocking on that door. Again, the Pistons have already started to look elsewhere, and the Suns are rumored to be going after CP3. The Hawks are rumored to be going after Drew Holiday. A lot of this sounds like the suitors are starting to step away, possibly because they feel like Fred is probably going to stay in Toronto. Or maybe they just feel like there are greener pastures with other free agents. Regardless, if the number of suitors are starting to diminish, Fred's bargaining power is out the door. All of a sudden it is, okay, the Raptors see there's no suitors, they can offer as little as they want. So Fred's got to keep plowing away at this. Like, no. I'm not giving you that hometown discount. So a couple of things are at play here, but I think that if we look at the entire landscape, that for me gives me some, at least some comfort knowing that regardless of what Fred says, he's a businessman. He just wants to get paid, but at the same time, he does want to win. And that situation is currently present for him in Toronto.
Andreas, what about yourself?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that snippet was taken out of context because let's be honest, in the grand scheme of things, this is definitely being quite a lousy offseason if it wasn't so short because of the pandemic and 2020 just being just all over the place. I think like no eyes would be on this offseason at all because like you look at the top prospects now compared to next year. Russell now is like, oh my God, finally like a huge name is like out there, but like next year all eyes are on Giannis and a boatload of people compared to this year. So with that in mind, Fred VanVleet has become a part of that target where it's like he is one of the most discussed names, where in other years, like last year, he probably wouldn't have been, compared to like Kawhi, compared to Anthony Davis. And as we all know, Anthony Davis, even though he's still a name this year, is likely staying with the Lakers, so it doesn't matter. Point is, he has been discussed, and that means that his talent has been noticed. So because of that, I guess it's easy to, do the whole fake news thing, grab a snippet, toss it out there. At the end of the day, Jay's right. The guy just wants to get paid. He wants to be – the guy's a champion. The guy is becoming well-known as a two-way player, a fantastic guard. So, he obviously wants a recognition. And let's also be honest, the media is also great for trade prospects because if he said, well, I don't need anything – no one's going to offer much for him and whatever. So he wants that payday, and the world has heard that he wants that payday, and that payday could even come from Toronto where they say, hey, listen, we respect you. We really want you. But at the end of the day, if we're looking for that huge key player, maybe Giannis or somebody else, I don't know how overboard with the price we can go. And I think Jay's number is really good. What was it, the 20 mil? So
ideally less, but yeah, that's probably the walk away there for the Raptors, my guess.
Right. We could definitely use him because I fully believe, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said that Lowry only keeps getting better and better. And I fully believe that, but that is going to stop at some point because he is getting older for an athlete. And we would love to have VanVleet ushered in as the next in line. So I would love to have him stay. If he's like, I just don't want to see his talents wasted on a team that's not going to be very good. And I don't mean any disrespect, like a Charlotte or like a Hawks or certainly not a New York Knicks. But again, I think they've already stopped inquiring about VanVleet there. But like all of the teams that are open for him, I don't know. Like I would like to see him flourish on a team. But the thing is, he wants to be a leader, and to be a leader, you have to kind of go for broke. So I feel like in this particular situation, if he wants chemistry, he's got it right now because I don't know what chemistry he's going to get on the teams that aren't that great with that might acquire him right now. But if he wants to lead, that's a different story. So I don't believe he's going to have both. It's going to be one or the other. Lead and take a lesser team, have chemistry, and be on a team where you're not the leader.
And one thing before I ask Derek what you believe your walkaway number is for Fred and the Raptors is to take into consideration Terrence Davis. And what I mean by that is, for me, before his allegations, my thought process was, okay, at some point, possibly as early as this time next year, Kyle Lowry is no longer a Raptor. And Fred jumps up into Kyle's spot as the leader, and Terrence jumps into Fred's spot as the backup. With what's currently going on with Terrence on a legal standpoint, does the incentive for the Raptors to sign Fred become that much more critical, right? That you can't, there's a possibility here that both of them may not be here next year, right? So both of them meaning Terrence and Fred, right? So does that factor into what your walkaway number for the Raptors is? Like, does it go a little bit higher now?
I don't know that necessarily Terrence Davis affects Fred VanVleet's walkaway number as much as what you said, Jay. I think you hit right at the money. Is the landscape of the league, I think, is going to be big here. You mentioned the Hawks' interest in Holiday, the Suns' interest in CP3. Westbrook is now on the market. Charlotte doesn't seem to be a destination that I think that he would go to, given, Rozier and Devontae Graham was flourishing there. I'm still keeping my eye on Detroit. The Dwayne Casey connection there, it seems interesting to me. They do have a clear need for a point guard. I think that could be an interesting destination. I'm also keeping my eye on the New York Knicks. Even if they do overpay for Fred VanVleet, they still have a ton of cap space. So they got a bunch of their team option guys coming off the books, and still are going to have room in 2021 if they want to decide to pair somebody in the backcourt with Fred VanVleet or go for that wing that they've been looking for. Phoenix, I think, and you know what, Phoenix too, I'm not ruling out Phoenix either, because I think Phoenix is also a good fit next to Devin Booker. Fred VanVleet obviously being able to do what Booker can't defensively specifically, and can shoot the ball as a spot-up guy and let Booker do a lot of the creation on that end as well. So I think I'm still keeping an eye on those three teams, being the Knicks, Phoenix, and Detroit, as being potential bidders for Fred VanVleet. And that's why I think my number rises up a little bit from yours, Jay. I'm going to go with my walkaway number as 4 for 85. With a player option on that fourth year, and maybe some incentives for all-star, for three-point percentage, for points per game, something that can get him a little bit higher. Whether they're likely or unlikely is to be determined, but just some of those little extra goodies in the bag, I guess, if you want to call it, to try and make it seem like that salary might actually be a little bit higher than the agent number, we'll call it. Or sorry, not the agent number. The agent number is the one that if he hits all the incentives, this is what he gets. That's what the agents like to report.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So,
right.
But I think the walkaway number is 4 for 85, and I think the report on Real GM was that 4 for 80 is what they need to pay him to also have max cap space in 2021. I still think that there is a way that you could get off of a guy like Norman Powell if he picks up his player option. I think that you can get off of a guy like Dwayne Hernandez and Matt Thomas, whether you want to stretch those guys and, find some value on some minimum deals, and also develop maybe some second rounders and some rookie contracts that the Raptors have obviously done so good at that could that fill in the gaps there if Giannis does choose the Raptors as a destination. So I think that five extra million that we're split apart there, Jay, isn't necessarily a big deterrent for the Raptors to be able to get Giannis if they need to, while shedding that extra $5 million. But I think we just differ a little bit on the landscape of the league. While I still understand that there's a small amount of bidders, I think the bidders, Fred VanVleet, actually fits in really well to those specific teams outside of Charlotte, those being obviously Phoenix, Detroit, and the Knicks. So just based on that, that's my walkaway number, 485 with a player option and maybe some incentives that get it up to 90.
That sounds good. And if we're going to be discussing the Suns, I mean, can I throw out a sign-in trade there with the Suns? Rubio and Oubre. Is anyone interested?
Ooh, Rubio and Oubre for Fred VanVleet. Wouldn't that be interesting, eh? Oh boy.
Well, I mean, the point of bringing in Fred VanVleet would make Rubio
expendable. That's right. Yeah.
Expendable. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And you sweeten the pot with a wing like Oubre, because the Raptors are never short on wings. Like all they have is wings for days. So, does something like that interest you?
It's funny. I wasn't prepared for that question. I'm gonna say no. I didn't even consider that. That wasn't even something I remotely considered. I'm gonna say no. I do. Oubre is enticing, but again, that's gonna be 1 year of Oubre. He's making $14 million next year, and then he's off. Ricky Rubio do $17 million this coming season, and then another $17 million next year. I think his shooting liability is just a kind of a problem. I don't think he's the defensive player that he once was touted to be as well. But even though Kelly Oubre is intriguing, and I do like his potential anywhere he might decide to end up. He's a Drew Hanlon client. I'm a big fan of Drew Hanlon as a trainer, and the guys that he trains usually end up doing well. So I do like Kelly Oubre, but I think I like Fred VanVleet a little bit more. Unless Fred VanVleet decides he's not coming back, and then a sign and trade has to occur to actually help the Raptors to be able to get someone so we don't lose him for nothing. That would be very generous on Fred VanVleet's part, and I would definitely that's something we would have to definitely explore should that happen. Kind of like how CP3 did to the Clippers when he went to the Rockets by opting into his deal so that they could trade for him instead of opting out and walking for nothing. So kind of similar to that, I would say. But As of assuming Fred wants to come back and it's the Raptors initiating this trade, I would say no. If Fred says, "Oh, I don't necessarily want to come back, but I'll just do this sign and trade thing so you can get it," yeah, sure, why not? Give me some Kelly Oubre.
Makes sense. I like it.
You guys, this is probably a shorter conversation, but I think we know the answer here. Do you guys see OG Anunoby taking the designated player extension here? I think he can make more money if he actually decides to enter restricted free agency and get paid more next year. I'm assuming that OG is going to step into a bigger role this year. I would assume he already showed a lot of good things last year, not just being potentially one of the best on-ball defensive players in the entire league, but also being able to do stuff off the dribble. You know, we know OG is his 3-and-D guy, but I'm sure you guys can agree that we saw a little bit more from OG in terms of attacking closeouts. You know what I mean? 2 dribbles and a good decision, being able to put the ball on the floor, a little bit of stuff in the mid-range, just overall growth from OG's game after what was kind of a terrible season for him last year, right? The appendectomy, the death of his grandmother, never really got his foot off the ground in terms of moving in the regular season and didn't play any in the playoffs. And the first opportunity he got, he showed improvement offensively and hit one of the bigger Raptor shots in recent memory and the biggest shot of his career, and basically showed no emotion like a killer. So you love to see that. And basically, I assume he's going to wait till next offseason to enter restricted free agency, in which the Raptors hopefully will pay him a number that fits with their plan. But overall, I don't expect him to take the extension eligible money that will be on the table for him this year. Do you guys disagree? Do you think there's any argument for OG taking that money just to get the stability, or what do you guys think?
Yeah, and just so that the listeners are aware of the 2 options here, if OG were to take the extension, that does lock him in, and there is that stability that you were referring to, Derek, in terms of, you know, he's had 3 full seasons, and you know his second one was horrible, right?
Right.
And if he's at all worried about his injury history or even just his bad luck, I always find that he's the first one who ends up on the floor with a poke in the eye or something like that. So I can see why he might be a little bit tense about waiting a year to get paid. But I do agree with you in terms of, you know, he's got a better payday and probably a better situation if he waits until next year. And what that means is that next season he would have to wait until the Raptors, quote unquote, sign a max free agent. That's the ideal here. And then whatever's left over is going to go to him, which would still end up being more than an extension that he signs now. So yeah, the signs point to, yeah, he should absolutely wait a year. But you know, if he ends up signing now, I mean, we saw it with Siakam last year. I wouldn't fault him if he ended up taking the extension now. I just agree with you in terms of like the better route is to wait a year.
Yeah, for sure. Andreas, you agree?
Oh, yeah, I firmly agree with that. I think Jay basically hit all of the points on the head. And in terms of him just being, you know, like a player and trying to figure out his future, I think that 1 year where he was out for most of the year kind of stunted his growth. But as you pointed out so aptly, he was doing fantastically well the last season. So I think he's the kind of person to not be impulsive. I think he would like to grow as a player a lot more and see what he can bring to the Raptors. You know, perhaps as a starter, as a main option after Siakam and Lowry, and hopefully Van Vliet. I think he's the kind of person where he wouldn't just assume that other teams are champing at the bit to sign him, and he will likely try to wait it out. Let's say so. I don't know. I see a bright future for somebody like OG who is, you know, he's introverted. He's all about the game, and I'm excited, and I'll be happy whatever he does. But I think he's very calculative, so I think he's going to wait it out.
Yeah, I would agree, Andreas. Very quickly, do you guys have any targets of guys that you could add to this roster for next season? The Raptors are going to have probably the full MLE to work with, which means they can offer a contract of up to $9.2 million, which does not count toward their cap number. but does count toward their tax number. They're looking like they're not going to be in the luxury tax, if I had to guess. So they got $9.2 million to play with. I'm going to assume that they're not going to add any excess money for next season to keep that 2021 plan open, as we talked about. Maybe we can discuss that a little more in detail later. But with that full mid-level exception of $9.2 million, is there anybody on your mind that you, in terms of free agents, that you think might be a target for the Raptors to get just on a one-year deal?
It's a tie. No, actually, no, it's not a tie. I have two guys in mind. Harry Giles and Chris Dunn are the two that come to mind. Harry Giles is a perfect Raptor in terms of someone who is young. He's a development. He can still grow. He's just been stuck on this really crappy Kings team,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, seeing him work in our with our development staff is going to work wonders for him. I think if we're able to get him for the MLE, that's a win in terms of replacing some of the big man minutes we're likely going to lose if Gasol does eventually go to Spain, or if Ibaka doesn't find the right deal here in Toronto. And so, yeah, I lean more towards wanting Harry Giles, but a close second, or I guess the booby prize in this would be Chris Dunn. And the reason why I like him is he's just a defensive monster, and how he managed to play that. Like, I think he was leading the league in steals percentage last year, and he fits the bill of he's like a guard version of Rondé Hollis Jefferson, who we
Right.
know is not going to be coming back to the Raptors. So having him signed again, and I hate that we keep bringing up Terrence Davis here, but assuming that Terrence Davis is not playing for the Raptors next year, I think getting someone like a Chris Dunn to just cause havoc on defense is not a bad secondary prize. So for me, it's one of those two guys.
Right. Yeah, I like that. I know Harry Giles is definitely a Blake Murphy favorite. He's been banging the table for that all year, and your explanation is just as good. I totally agree with why he and yourself would want to go for Harry Giles. I think that's a perfect candidate. I'm kind of interested, and I know I'm not sure if he's going to pick up his player option. Something about Willie Cauley-Stein intrigues me. I think it's very similar to that. You know, he is 27 on the older side of things. He's been in the league for 5 years. He's got a player option of $2.2 million. You know, I don't necessarily know that he's going to pick that up 100%. I mean, has he done enough to earn maybe that in free agency? I mean, I would think so. I think he can get a 1 year $5 million deal somewhere, and I think the Raptors would be happy to give that to him, especially with the idea that Gasol is going back to Spain. If you want to give Ibaka a 1 year balloon payment and have Willie Cauley-Stein come in and use a bit of your MLE on him as a potential guy that can prove himself as a backup center, and who knows, he plays well enough, he could even move into the starting center role if Ibaka were to walk the next year, and have him on a good deal. So something about Willie Cauley-Stein intrigues me, assuming that he opts out of that player option. I'm also looking at I've thought about Wesley Matthews again, but I think he can be had for something under the MLE. Again, 33-year-old shooting guard. It feels like we have a lot of guys to play that shooting guard role, but I don't know. Something about Matthews intrigues me. Seems like a low risk guy to bring in. Other than that, I can't really think of really too many. I'm one of those guys that the Raptors actually I think that they should draft a point guard in the draft at 29, and I think this draft has a lot of point guards to be had. So I'd like to take that route instead of the stopgap. So that'd probably be my pushback against your Chris Dunn point there, Jay. But I do like Chris Dunn, especially his defensive prowess fits in nicely with Toronto's system there. Anything for you, Andreas? Anybody that comes to mind for the MLE or anybody else that you might be just intrigued to see in a Raptor uniform?
Well, the main thing is, you brought up the whole thing about the guards, so I feel like that section is covered, and that was never my primary concern. My primary concern, is as you pointed out, Gasol leaving potentially, Ibaka potentially leaving. There's some rumor now apparently that Durant's trying to draft him to Brooklyn, which would be dope for Ibaka, but it would be terrible for us. So we've got to find people to figure out, like, maybe like that position. So there are so many so many options but basically it's like that defensive presence. Maybe if we move things around, move Siakam to the 5, which I it's not preferred, but God,
We have
like
we have seen that work. We've even seen OG play the 5, right? Like that small ball
That's
lineup
right.
can work. It's just I don't
that's
know if
true.
we can run that for a full NBA season. Like
That's what
that's
I'm
Yeah.
just
saying. It's not
yeah.
preferred. We're not Mike D'Antoni. We know our
Hey,
limits.
and Nick Nurse is liable to try anything, man. You never know with that. He's a defensive genius. Maybe he thinks he can play OG and Siakam at a 5 for a whole year. But no, I tend to agree. Probably not something. In fact, no, I'm going to go a step further. Definitely not something you want to run for a whole season.
No, he likes to have options, and that's why he's such a great coach. He likes to try things out. He doesn't like a one and done type deal where it's like 7 seconds or less, or the all small ball. I'm sorry to keep ragging on D'Antoni, but like he's got to like. I mean, if you're known for 7 seconds or less, don't you think every coach in the league is going to try and stymie that? I digress.
he's a division rival now. You can totally keep ragging on him.
Good. I'm just trying to flip through the free agents. A really good one if we could get him, but he's probably going to be too expensive, so we'd have to finagle in some way. If we, oh no, that's the wrong Holiday. Well, Justin Holiday would be good as well. Drew Holiday, if we
Hey, all the holidays are good.
yeah,
Yeah, I love Drew. Hey, you want to bring in Drew Holiday? Yeah. What's it going to cost though?
we signed Justin and we just trade and we say, hey, we made a mix up. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Put him in masks. So you got mixed up in COVID. Yeah.
I noticed that DeMarcus Cousins is currently available now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Make the argument there.
If we could see, I know he could play for cheap because he's done so twice already, but that was for the Lakers and for the Warriors. Would he be willing to take a pay cut with us? Because as much as the guy bothers me, I think at the 5 he'd be ruthless. I think he'd be fantastic. Plus, the occasional 3, we could always use that, especially if we're having an off day with like Siakam lobbing up 3s, or if we were to lose Van Vliet, we definitely need another 3 ball. So I don't know.
DeMarcus Cousins is interesting. Now, he did tear his ACL the last time we saw him. I think it was in a pickup run, actually, like a non-contact pickup run, if I remember correctly, where he just tore his ACL out of nowhere. Didn't even play a game for the Lakers. So I'm going to go a step further, Andreas. He could definitely be had for cheap. I think he's going to play for the minimum. Like he just needs to show that he can play basketball without getting hurt at this point. Like that's the level that we're at here. Like last time we saw him, he was playing in the finals for the Warriors and against the Raptors, and he did have a couple good games. But I think ultimately he was a liability to some extent for the Warriors on the floor defensively. And there's nothing that tells me that he won't continue to be that if he gets back on the floor again. So maybe that could be an option, but I still would like to have a third center that maybe fills that defensive role. And is Chris Boucher that guy? I mean, that's a name we still haven't really brought up. Like at 28 years old, is Chris Boucher going to come back on this roster? Looks like he's a restricted free agent, $1.9 million cap hold. What is he looking for in restricted free agency? Is there any suitors out there for a 28-year-old Chris Boucher? I don't think there is personally. I think we could bring him back for something close to the room except I know we have more than the room exception, but the room exception number, which is around 3 million or so. I think he would come back for 3 million. And if you want to between that and DeMarcus Cousins minimum contract, you got your second and third center spot filled for somewhere in the $5 or $6 million range. I mean, I think that could potentially work if that's where you really want to go. I personally like the Willie Cauley-Stein fit because I think he kind of fills both of those needs personally. Right. Where he's not necessarily the guy that you want to throw the ball into the post offensively, but he's also a guy that you can just roll hard to the rim and can really catch the ball with his athleticism above the square and really throw down some dunks for you. I don't think that's Boogie Cousins anymore. I think he's more of a low to the ground center that really you need to throw the ball into the post with him and trust that he's going to make his move, get to his fadeaway, because I think his athleticism is completely zapped. But that's not to say I don't think it's an interesting option. I just think that if you do get Boogie Cousins, you want to have that third defensive center to probably fill that gap, because I think he's going to be a bit of a sieve, a turnstile, traffic cone. What do you guys like using to describe that sort of thing I'm talking about? But you get what I'm
obelisk.
saying.
If you want a good defensive center who's great at rolling to the rim, There is a Jakob Poeltl who's available for
Oh, interesting.
a
And
good amount of our MLE there.
I
So
saw that. I saw that. Do we want Pirtle back? He was looking pretty decent with the
yes,
Spurs.
he played
He
really well
yes,
for the Spurs.
please reunite Yak and Skills.
Yak and Skills. I forgot about Yak and Skills. Hey, you know what? I'm not necessarily opposed to that. Now, I think the problem with Jakob Poeltl is that he's probably going to want multiple years at the MLE, and that's going
That's a
to
good
eat
point.
into 2021. So that
Yep.
probably will be the issue of bringing back Jakob Poeltl, is I don't think he's just going to take a one-year deal. But given this depressed free agent market and how good things are looking for 2021 in terms of teams with space and the market for centers, maybe he is content to take a one-year deal at 9.2 million, and then get back out there. He's still very young. I mean, he's still, like, even if he takes a one-year deal this year, gets back out next year, he could still get that 4-year deal he's looking for. So it all depends on what he's looking for. But if he's looking for anything more than a one-year deal with the Raptors, I just don't think it's worth giving him that
Makes
money
sense.
at the mid-level.
Yep, good point.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so let's kind of talk about this overwhelming thing that none of the other 29 teams have a problem with in the NBA, but we're from Canada, so we do, is we can't even play in our own arena next year, or it seems that way, because the Canadian government doesn't want U.S. citizens coming in and out, regardless of whether they're high-end NBA players or not. Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government says, no, we're not going to tolerate that. And I'm sure Doug Ford is very similarly on that same train of thought. All that leads to saying is, where are the Raptors going to play next year, guys?
We've heard a lot of different things, and it's like a new city every day. And to be honest, I haven't actually caught up with what the latest one is. Jay, do you have an inkling as to what it is? Because I've heard everything at this point.
I was on CP24 this morning, and I did
Nashville?
mention Newark. Oh yeah, Nashville is one of the newer ones, but the more
Yeah.
realistic one, I believe, is Newark. But and you can throw out all the names you want. You can throw out Buffalo, you can throw out Louisville, you can throw out Kansas City. But for me, it's down to two teams. Two locations. Newark is ideal because it's right in the hub of where all of the other division foes play. It's also the former home of the New Jersey Nets, so they have everything that we as a Raptors team would want in terms of practice facilities and NBA arena and all that fun stuff, and the ability to just stay in the States. But let me throw out one other suggestion to you, and it's starting to gain some momentum, and that is the ability to just stay in Toronto. So there
Right.
are two ways that this can happen. Number one is and obviously I just read Eric Koreen's latest for The Athletic on how this could possibly work.
Okay, I did read that, so I'm glad you're talking about this. Go ahead.
Yeah. And one point he does bring up that I've actually forgotten about was that in the province of Alberta, they've already started to use rapid testing for travelers. So this is a way to which they can try to bypass this mandatory 14-day quarantine of anyone entering Canada. So this rapid testing would take place, and then you self-isolate for about a day or two.
Mm.
If they're able to bring that over to Toronto at very least, just even for these NBA teams coming in, that could work. But there's no indication that that's being talked about or that that's even being considered. But you have to think that, with Masai's current relationship with Justin Trudeau, maybe he's got some good connection there to try to make something happen. The other proposal, which Eric Koreen does not talk about, and is one I'm going to throw out to you guys, just for consideration, two that are absolutely not going to happen, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. Number one, the NBA says your first 36 games are all on the road. Hopefully, by the time the second half of the season starts, the restrictions are lifted and you can have a 36-game homestand to end the season. Option number two, the Raptors just stay in Toronto, forfeit all their road games, but also win due to forfeit all their home games because teams can't come here because of the 14-day quarantine. They still enter the playoffs at 36 and 36, and they're fully healthy. So which of those options do you guys like?
We can't really do that one.
Oh man, I thought
Can we really?
I thought the first one was ridiculous. The second one was even more ridiculous. Oh my goodness, that is funny, man.
If I lost you some listeners, I apologize.
No, that was a good laugh. I couldn't believe the second one was actually crazier than the first one. So the first one, the 36 at home, 36 on the road. The schedule makers are going to just lose their minds trying to make that happen. I think that that's going to be just nuts, especially considering the fact that they're going to want to try to do this baseball style stuff, which actually, now that I think about it, might actually help that if they're going to be more consistently on the road and at home. If they want to do these baseball style series, that actually might be helpful to that. But I still think that's going to be too difficult to pull off. And there's no way that the Raptors played 0 games in 2021. So I'm just going to.
But you do agree at 36 and 36, they will still make the playoffs.
Yes,
They'll probably
they
be the
will.
7th seed. So
Yeah.
they'll
in
be
the East,
fresh.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
In the East, they'll be.
That's an indictment against the Eastern Conference. That's
The Hornets trying their best would have like 10 games less, like guaranteed.
Exactly.
But like,
Why expend the energy? Anyways, but for on the real though, like I think it's between Newark and, hopefully some deal working out where they can stay in Toronto.
So you guys agree that the only thing keeping us from going to Seattle is basically just the travel, right?
yes.
Okay. Because that's my ideal. But given the rest of the teams in the division, Brooklyn, New York, was it Philly and Boston? Those are the other two, I believe. Am I wrong with that? I never followed the divisions because they really mean nothing in the NBA. Not like they do
That's
in
true,
the
they
NFL.
don't.
Yeah. But
They used to mean a little more.
yeah, just not anymore, unfortunately.
No.
But yeah, so that's the only thing keeping Seattle out of there. I think I agree with you, Jay. Probably Newark is probably the best option, just considering the proximity to the teams in the division. I would guess they stay in the Eastern time zone or whatnot, so that's probably the best option, I would think. What are you, Andreas? You got any unique ideas other than what Jay kind of threw out there?
Not as New York as that. Well, I guess one other, I'll one up it, and no, listeners, I'm not serious, but deep down I am for selfish reasons. We could always just boot the Knicks out and just overtake their stadium, so that way everyone
Yeah,
wins.
that makes sense.
We don't need them in the league. We can stop pretending.
We could just play in Detroit. I just thought about that. I'll play in Detroit. That's basically a home game every time we go there anyway.
There's your home game.
There you go. I wouldn't mind Seattle outside of the travel because I'm a massive Storm fan and they just won the WNBA chip. So why don't we have them going back to back and the Raptors winning a chip in Seattle too? It'd be fantastic. And the best part is they would win a championship and then just leave. So it's like we have a perfect Seattle Raptors championship run. That's it. Just one time they win once and they leave. It would be pure destiny in the league, but that's probably not going to happen. We could also do that with New York though, but to have both would be great. Would we have to change names like the Hornets did when the hurricane happened? Would we have to be the New York Raptors?
No, it would be the Toronto Raptors of Newark, New Jersey. I believe that'll be the name. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Ridiculous.
Well, it's better than the Washington Football Club or whatever the hell. Like
yeah.
It's like we have to stick by this terrible, problematic name so much that we can't think of the Washington Polar Bears or the Washington Sharks.
No, actually, Dre, if we do the Toronto Raptors of Newark, you just make that an acronym and it spells out Tron. I would totally I would totally cheer for Tron.
Oh my goodness! Look at this. This is groundbreaking right here. This is.
Can you imagine our jerseys?
Oh man, just do the Tron font and I'd buy that right now.
Get Daft Punk to do our national anthems.
Holy man, we're getting crazy now. This is great. I love it though. This is just fantastic. All right, let's get back. Let's get back to a somewhat serious topic here. Like, what does a home game look like for Toronto? Like, do you think this is an unfair advantage that we have to play? Like, assuming we do have to play in another state or whatever it is, or Newark, let's say, just for the sake of the conversation, is this actually unfair that we actually can't play in our own home arena? And should these even count as a regular 36 home games? Like, these 36 home games are not as fair of an advantage as the rest of the 2019s in the NBA. Can we agree on that? And what do you think the NBA will do to try and combat that?
Well, that's assuming that there's even fans, because as it stands right now, there won't be even an attendance. Like the Lakers have just basically said, we're not accepting people for the foreseeable future. So if that doesn't matter, and if we're all playing to empty stadiums, I don't think it matters at all. However, when that starts, Because I can imagine they would allow people in small, isolated crowds to show up before the borders are open for us to play in Toronto again. Then I would argue perhaps because how many? I can imagine there's Toronto fans everywhere. The Raptors are a bit of a household name, and you see when you watch away games that there's Raptors fans everywhere, especially in like parts like Detroit. But how many would there be in, let's say, the top destinations we've listed, New York or in Seattle or in Nashville? I can imagine a hell of a lot. But then again, you probably have people who just want to go to a basketball game, but they could be going for the opposition. So when that kind of stuff starts, I would say, yeah, it's definitely kind of going up. It's like an uphill battle. But until then, it's just going to be the same for everybody. It's just going to be empty arenas.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there, and I think that to your point, the Lakers are the only team so far that have said they will have no fans. But uh, yeah, I can't really argue against that, and I would agree with you too, Derek, in terms of like this is going to be a disadvantage for the Raptors. I mean, this is not an apples to apples comparison, but TFC is doing the same in MLS right now, and they're performing just as well as you could have hoped for, right? They just finished one place short of the Supporter Shield. Oh my gosh, I'm talking about soccer. All right, back to the Raptors here. But I think that there's a possibility here, as long as the number of fans is quite limited, it won't be as bad. But I can't help but think that the Raptors are at a disadvantage here, and I think that if anything, it's meant to be like that because Raptors fans, we've all been fans since day one, and we've always felt that we were the ugly stepsister or the
Underdog
forgotten child here.
mentality.
Exactly. So it only makes sense that they be the only team that doesn't actually have a home game this year.
Fair. I like what both of you guys said. I totally agree there. I also think one of the underrated things about playing on the road is not necessarily what happens when you get into the arena, but how you get to the arena, the travel. Just even being able to go for a 7-hit game homestand and know that you're going to sleep in your own home for like 2 weeks is comforting, right? Like it's just like habits that you lean on, right? Like if you have a girlfriend or a wife, like, oh, like I can count on, being with my family, like, or spending time with, my girl, or, being able to wake up in my own bed and cook my own meals, like the familiarity and the comfort and the habits that you can kind of lean back on during a homestand, I think goes a little bit underrated. And I don't think that the Raptors will obviously have that. And I think that that's going to be at a disadvantage too. But hopefully it'll be Newark's to actually just minimize the other portion of the thing that I think is underrated about playing on the road versus at home, which is the travel time and back-to-backs, which there's going to be a lot more of this year if you're going to have to try and fit in a 72-game season, right? So hopefully that the league will take that into account and place us somewhere where there won't be that much travel. And I think that'll also be a factor when it comes to this sort of stuff. So we'll see what happens. But either way, it's Raptors basketball. There's going to be Raptor fans that show up. You know what I mean? There's going to be the We the North flags. There's still going to be Jack yelling buckets on the TV. It's all going to feel the same.
Can't wait.
Yeah, me either.
Yep.
The last thing I want to touch on before I guys let you go, and you've been super generous with your time, much appreciated. I don't know how much like draft work you guys do or have done. You guys got any targets for who the Raptors might take at 29?
Xavier Tillman.
Xavier Tillman?
Well, I mean, he's one of the names, but like I like what I'm reading in terms of guys that could fall in that range. And while it's very tempting to think that the Raptors might actually trade out of that spot. I mean, that's another rumor that's kind of gaining steam here, is the Raptors could just trade down so they could have another second round pick, and that's a difference in terms of salary you're paying and guarantees and whatnot.
Right.
But in terms of who will be available there at 29, there's quite a few names I think that could be there. And one name in particular that I really do hope ends up with the Raptors is Leandro Balmaro. He's a draft and stash, but judging from what I've seen, and there was a time when the draft and stash wasn't that effective. The Raptors definitely don't have a good track history here with that. And
Nano DeColo, baby.
Oh boy, I believe he's still on the books. No, anyways,
I think he is. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
But someone like a Leandro Balmaro excites me because I think I've been suckered into watching game film that isn't from the NCAA or isn't from the NBA. And I'm thinking specifically about Balmaro's international film. I've gotten suckered into it before and thinking that this guy could be something, and it ends up being nothing. But I don't know. This kid looks legit, and if the Celtics somehow pass on him with one of I predict they're going to have like, well, how many do they have? Like 3 first-round picks or something like that. If they do pass on him and he does fall to the Raptors, I do hope the Raptors get him. But at the same time, there are a number of players there. Like I already said Tillman, but you were talking earlier about possibility of getting a guard. There are a couple of good guards there, right? And if I'm starting to warm up to the fact that if someone like a Trey Jones is someone that the Raptors pick up, I can live with that. It's not my ideal. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that could fall in the 29 range who I like. And then over down in number 59, I know this wasn't the question, but the name I keep seeing over and over is Paul Ibuya, and that's another good name that excites me in terms of a big that could possibly step in after a little bit of development in the G League. So yeah, some exciting spots there, some exciting guys, and I think that what's exciting about this draft specifically is that there isn't a clear-cut number one superstar to be drafted at number one. It's kind of the value picks are in abundance actually. So anyone who falls in that 20 to 30 to 40 range could really contribute and could really be, kind of like that next Siakam almost. So it's exciting for the Raptors, and I'm kind of looking forward to who they pick there at 29.
Yeah, me too. I'm all in on one guard, and that's Grant Riller. It's Grant Riller for me. 23-year-old senior out of Charleston. He played 5 years. Yeah, sure. He's 23. I get it. He's an older guy, but I'll give you a list of some older guys that have succeeded. Donovan Mitchell, CJ McCollum, Robert Covington, Kyle Kuzma, Matisse Thybulle. All these guys are seniors that are coming out. Some of them undrafted, some of them
Fred
Fred
VanVleet.
VanVleet, thank you. I was just about to say, missed it. And I believe even Norman Powell was a senior, if I'm not mistaken, at UCLA. I could be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But the point is that I think the ageism is a little overrated when it comes to avoiding these type of guys. And Grant Riller is offense ready, right today. Like he can play in the NBA on offense today. He's a bucket. His finishing around the rim is ridiculous. He's got the ability to shoot from 3. He carried a massive offensive load at Charleston. He's got a shiftiness to his game that I don't think has been with the Toronto Raptors for some time. Maybe since Rafer Alston skipped to my Lou. Like it's been that long since we've had a guard that's really been shifty in that mold. And he's got it. He's got it when it comes to his handle. He can move guys east and west, get the defender to drop, step back. He's got the whole package offensively. The questions really come with him is defensively. And we know that if you're not going to buy in defensively, you're not going to play for the Toronto Raptors. That's just how it works with Dwayne Casey. You don't play defense, you don't see the floor. And he's showing a lot of good tools, in my opinion. He slides his feet well. He does – there's a lot of that beating his guy to the spot for charges thing, kind of like Lowry. Now, Lowry does it more on a help side instead of actually doing it on the ball. Grant Riller likes to do it on the ball, where he'll literally just anticipate your first dribble and your first step to your right or left and just beat you to the spot and take a charge. He's really good at that. He's just not engaged at all times. And I think that when you can get the engagement from a guy that has the tools to be a successful defender, I think the Raptor system is the perfect system to be able to get those to get that buy-in from guys like that. If you guys remember specifically, do you remember when Stanley Johnson and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson came in this year? I think it was Nick Nurse that called them out, and he said that you guys don't really know how we play defense here, do you? Like you don't understand that. Like you don't play defense, you don't get on the floor. And Stanley Johnson didn't get on the floor, and that's for many other reasons. But Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, when he got on the floor, was primarily because he was a guy that could play some defense. And I think Grant Riller will buy into that role. And whether you lose Lowry in the 2021-2022 season because he doesn't come back for whatever reason, maybe he's just worth too much. Maybe he just wants to ring chase again. Whatever Lowry's motives are, who knows? If Fred VanVleet doesn't come back we lose the bidding on somebody, I think that a 23-year-old Grant Riller could come in and really provide an offensive punch, and I think you get him into that Raptor system where it forces you to be accountable defensively and buy in. I think that's a perfect fit for Toronto. The player comparison, a lot of people use Fred VanVleet as a player comparison. I don't necessarily agree with that. To me, he's more like Dennis Schroeder. To me, he's more like Dennis Schroeder with a bit of a better jump shot, a bit of better finishing, but not as quick of a first step. Dennis Schroeder's first step is ridiculously fast, and he's got Riller as a quick first step, but not Schroeder fast. Schroeder's first step is, again, just completely ridiculous. So that's the guy I'm looking for at 29. Malachi Flynn, I also think, is interesting there. I like Xavier Tillman, like you said, Jay, as well. If Trey Jones slips there, I'm kind of interested in that too. Even a Nico Mannion, like I don't know why he went from 14 to 45 really quick, and I'm not exactly sure what changed in that time. And I know you're giving me the
I'm not
stink face
sold on
there, Jay.
Mannion.
Okay, you're
I'm
not sold
on him.
Not sold on Mannion. That's fair.
You-
But
wrong Wildcat. Wrong Wildcat.
wrong Wildcat. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, not a Kentucky and Arizona. I got you. But yeah, Riller's the guy that I'm locked in on, and that's the guy I want to see in a Toronto Raptors uniform when they pick at 29. Andreas, you got anybody that's on your mind?
I don't follow college and that type of thing as much as I should.
Okay.
I try to play, catch up with this type of stuff where it's like who's going to be drafted. So unless you have Sir Ball himself, who keeps selling his sons, LaMelo now, so that's like the greatest frame of reference, LeVar. But no, in all seriousness, outside of the guys that you've already mentioned, which I'm trying to play catch up the last couple of weeks or so. This draft, it really is a bit of a crapshoot because it feels like one of those ones where anybody could be good or anybody could be meh.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not really as standout as some of the ones in the past. We've brought up Mitchell. You can bring up ones like Ben Simmons, where it's like, okay, we need to get that guy. Even the top 10 is really out to Anthony Edwards. Is he actually going to be good or is he going to be a bust? We don't actually know yet. So the only person I could think of outside of what you guys have said, and this is plainly because I'm uneducated in this type of thing, maybe Tyrell Terry, where
oh, that's a good name.
We could use some floor spacing because I brought up, if we're going to keep OG and we're going to keep Siakam, we're going to try and get them to do their thing. That's spacing on the floor, and the Raptors love spacing. And if we lose Gasol, we're going to need to bring that spacing back as much as possible. So perhaps somebody like him who can create the spacing, not defensively, but offensively. We need a shooter, especially if we lose Van Fleet. We need that shooter because right now Van Fleet, and I don't know if I'm alone in saying this, is our most dependable shooter. So we just need a guy that can hit buckets and open up. Now, the thing is, I haven't seen this game too much. What's he like defensively? Because I'm not saying that hypothetically. I honestly don't know as much as I should. Is he decent defensively, or would he be a liability?
I haven't studied enough to give you a solid opinion on that, but I've just seen him mock to Toronto in a few different mocks, and agreed the floor spacing is valuable to me. So that's basically all I have on Tyrell Terry. I'm not going to act like I know more than I do when it comes to his game, but not a bad name to throw out there. I think the Raptors would be happy to have him.
The disrespect for Matt Thomas, our best shooter. Come on, Dre.
Okay,
I will say there is one thing
true.
to there is one thing to keep in mind though, is the timing of the draft, right? The draft is on the 18th. 2 days later, free agency opens. So by the time the draft happens, we're still not going to know what's happening with Fred VanVleet, and that's interesting and very because of.
Good point there, Jay. I forgot about that. That's
So
right.
if the Raptors end up choosing, let's say, a Grant Riller, what does that indicate to Fred, right? Are they already drafting his successor? Or is this them trying to make sure that, or if they draft Xavier Tillman, or if they draft, like a Balmaro, what does that say? Does that say that, what does it indicate really? And
Right.
on top of all that is I do anticipate a lot of trades. Now, whether or not those will be involving the Raptors in any way, I haven't heard anything. I don't think so. But there will be, I think, a lot of trades, specifically in the upper half of the draft, that's going to affect the landscape of the NBA. And how that affects the Raptors is your guess is as good as mine. But I think that we're going to see a lot of action on Wednesday, and the action that we initially should be concerned about is who the Raptors draft at 29 and even at 59, because there very well could be someone who falls down there who can play right away. But what does that mean for our plans on 2 days later, right? With regards to who we're going to be signing. So let's keep an eye on who the Raptors eventually draft and absolutely overthink every single decision.
Yeah, for real, right? And we should point out too, whoever the Raptors draft, we should just blindly say like, hey, good pick, because whether it's DeLon Wright, no, I'm serious, whether it's DeLon Wright, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet, Terrence Davis. I don't care if you have a first round pick, second round pick, undrafted, like Masai and Bobby Webster and the scout team are incredibly well versed at taking these non-premium picks and turning them into contributors. And in some cases, mainly looking at Pascal Siakam, premium players. So whoever they pick, hey, I'm in
Good
for
pick.
it. Good
Good
pick.
pick.
Good pick. I'm telling the Raptors right now, good pick. I don't even know
Future headlines.
Future headlines.
Like,
evergreen tweet. Good pick.
It's starting to sound like Giannis at the All-Star drafting, where it's like, oh, it's a good pick, LeBron. That's a good pick.
That's funny. All right, guys, I've kept you long enough. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm assuming you guys are going to have content coming fast and furious as the NBA starts to ramp up again. I mean, we haven't had trades in like 14 months. We've been analyzing the same draft prospects for 14 months. Like, this is getting crazy here, and we're just kind of waiting for the floodgates to open, and I'm sure you guys are going to have a lot to talk about when that does happen. So, Andreas, Jay, thank you guys so much. Tell people where they can find some of your guys' work, if you not only the podcast, but if you write on the outside, and whatever you guys are interested in plugging, plug away, baby. Let's hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you for having us. Well, Jay is like an expert in like numbers and stuff. I don't know what you're doing bringing me on. I'm like a chicken with his head cut off when it comes to drafts and
don't say that, bro. Don't say that.
and money, but I'm happy to always discuss basketball. I love the sport, so I greatly appreciate it. You could find my own personal work. I do a lot of film reviews and interviews and masterclass lessons on the making of movies. You can find me doing that kind of stuff at Films Fatale, FILMSFATALE.com, those spaces. My top 100 films of the 1960s is going to launch next month, December 1st, I believe. There's a lot of weird crap on there, so check it out. What about you, Jay? Plug away.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rosalesaurus, ROSALESAURUS. You can find my writing and our podcast, That's a Wrap, on Raptors HQ. You can also check out our Twitter handle, That's a Wrap Pod. And that's where you can find us. And yeah, again, I echo what Dre said. Derek, thanks so much for having us on. This was a lot of fun. We definitely got to bring you onto our pod at some point. And, the way that this off season is going, I don't think we'll even have time for that, because I think the season is starting before we can blink.
Tomorrow, yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, again, thanks for coming on. I'd be happy to come on your guys' podcast, do a little home and home, maybe during the season when we get a couple games in. Feel free to have me on. I'm always happy to talk some Raptors. But thanks again for coming on, guys, and enjoy what should be a fun off season and another fantastic Raptor season. Appreciate it.
Let's make Tron happen.
Go Tron.
Go Tron 2020.
Sounds good. All right, take it easy, guys. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, guys. All right,
Thank
have a
you
good
so
one.
much.